Echo TV is a co-production of Minnesota's Emergency, Community, and Health Outreach Collaborative of Health, Safety, Emergency Preparedness, Ethnic and Nonprofit Agencies, and TPT's Minnesota channel.
Hello and welcome to ECHO. I'm your host, Lillian McDonald, Executive Director for ECHO. ECHO stands for Emergency, Community, Health, and Outreach. We provide information on health, safety, emergency, and civic information in multiple languages on this station and others. We have a new topic this time, understanding snow emergencies. We have two fine guests to fill us in, but first, we want you to watch this.
When you're living somewhere new, there are always lots of things to learn. Sometimes those things have to do with living in a new climate. In Minnesota, we get a lot of snow, and when we get quite a bit at once, both Minneapolis and St. Paul may declare snow emergencies. That means you'll need to follow snow emergency parking rules so the snowplows can clear the streets, and so your car won't get towed. It's important that city streets are cleared of snow as soon as possible so emergency vehicles and other drivers can get through. When people move their cars, the city can plow better, more safely, and faster. You can plan ahead by learning the parking rules before the snow comes. Once you know the rules, you can look for alternate parking that you can use during a snow emergency. Because when a city declares a snow emergency, certain parking rules go into effect. Minneapolis and St. Paul have different rules, and it's important to know your city's rules so your car doesn't get towed. If it's snowing, there are many ways to find out if a snow emergency has been declared. In Minneapolis, you can find out where you're allowed to park after a snowfall by calling 612-348-SNOW or 612-348-7669. You can also get information at www.minneapolismn.gov/snow. If you live in St. Paul, you can find out about winter parking by calling 651-266-PLOW. or 651-266-7569. You can also go to St. Paul's website at www.stpaul.gov/snow. Both cities' websites offer the information in many different languages. In both cities, snow emergency parking rules start at 9 p.m. on the day the snow emergency is declared. If you don't follow the parking rules, your car can be ticketed and towed to an impound lot, and it can be inconvenient and expensive to get it back. Snow emergencies happen in several phases, so you may have to move your car more than once to make sure it's safe from getting towed. Check back with your city's hotline or website to make sure your car is in a place where parking is allowed. It's best to plan ahead by knowing the parking rules before the snow falls, and then watch the media to find out if a snow emergency has been declared. If you are aware of where you can and cannot park after a snowfall, you'll save yourself a lot of stress and a lot of money.
Welcome back. You're watching ECHO. I'm your host, Lillian McDonald. ECHO's providing information this time in English on understanding snow emergencies. And here in Minnesota and other winter weather states, we get a lot of snow, and that can pose a few problems, especially when it comes to parking on the street or moving your car off the street so plows can clear the way for snow emergencies. Joining us to talk about this subject, we have Gao Vang from the city of Minneapolis. She's an Access and Outreach Specialist, and we also have Tom Saggart from the city of St. Paul, Street Maintenance Supervisor. Welcome to ECHO.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being here. Now, because the cities have different rules, okay, we'll take some time and interview each of you separately so we can be really clear about the differences between the two cities, our major metropolitan cities here in the Twin Cities area. But first, let's just start with a couple of general questions. What exactly is a snow emergency?
I like to think of a snow emergency as a parking emergency. That goes into effect at 9 p.m. on the evening of a snow emergency. We want you to remember no parking on streets that are marked night plow route or night plow route this side of street.
Right. And so snow falls in the Twin Cities, and the situation is a snow emergency is declared. And why does the city declare a snow emergency?
I think one of our main concerns is public safety. We want to make sure the police, fire, and ambulances can safely make it to their destinations, as well as the residents of St. Paul.
Yeah.
Also, it allows the plow drivers to do an effective job of plowing the snow and removing it from curb to curb.
Yeah, I mean, you know, streets some are more narrow than others, and so it makes sense when you get a lot of snow, you've got to pile it somewhere. Same applies in the city of Minneapolis. I mean, that's the goal, isn't it, for both cities, really for anywhere. Public officials trying to make sure the streets are clear so they're safe to be on, and you can put it somewhere, because when we get more than 50 inches of snow, more than 60, upwards of 70, there's not a lot of places to put it, so you're constantly out there moving it around. And almost everybody has a car, so that means that can create a lot of chaos. Let's look at the city of Minneapolis first, okay, Gal? Okay. Fill us in a little bit. When exactly does Minneapolis declare a snow emergency? Is it based on how much, how little, when it's coming?
Right. That's a good question, and there's not a set amount of inches that the city declares, but when there's a significant amount of snowfall that needs to be cleared from the streets. And it's also important to know that a snow emergency is declared no later than 6 p.m. on a given day.
Okay, so Minneapolis, it's 6 p.m., different in St. Paul per se, but the city declares the snow emergency, so it's not about X number of inches or Y number of inches. It's just basically the city says, hey, it's time.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
And that's well publicized on the media.
It is.
And as someone who owns a car, licensed driver, check it out and find out, right? That's the idea. So once you've declared a snow emergency in the city of Minneapolis, then what?
Well, snow emergency in Minneapolis is a 3-day process. So the day that the snow emergency is declared, parking is not allowed on snow emergency routes after 9 p.m.
Okay.
And snow emergency routes are main streets that are designated with blue street name signs or a red snow emergency route sign.
Okay.
At 8 a.m. the next day, that's day 2 of the snow emergency, and do not park on the even side of non-snow emergency routes. The following day at 8 a.m., day 3 of the final day, do not park on the odd side of non-snow emergency routes.
Okay, so the non-snow emergency routes are the places to park, but you have to pay attention to whether it's an odd or even day.
Correct.
That's really the deal.
Yes.
And you'll declare a snow emergency by 6 p.m., right? And that gives you a few hours to get the car off the street, right? Okay,
exactly.
So really it's about odd and even signs. So now I know this is going to sound like a silly question, but we have to ask it because, again, what do you mean by odd and even? Do you mean odd and even house numbers, street signs?
This number is determined by the last digit of a house number and is not related to the number street. So for example, if the last digit in your house number is an even number on day 2 of the snow emergency, you should park your car on the odd side so that the even side gets plowed.
Okay, so it's really important to know your address.
Yes, it is.
And that's what determines then exactly whether or not you can move your car to an odd or even side, right? All right. So now, and it's easy for people to get confused because we have a lot of number streets in the Twin Cities area. So people do get confused about that all the time. All right, so how do you find out if there's a snow emergency? When you see it snowing, what do you do?
Yeah, there's a few ways. You can check on local media. You can also call the City of Minneapolis Snow Emergency Hotline, which is 612-348-7669.
Okay.
You can check the City of Minneapolis website, and on that website you can sign up for text message alerts as well as phone call alerts. And lastly, you can also follow the Minneapolis Snow Emergency on Facebook and Twitter.
So your communications department is doing all it can to use a
Yes,
variety of different
is.
tools to reach people to give them the heads up. I know a lot of cities and suburbs are doing that too. I get text messaging from my suburb, and you know, it's nice. You know,
It is
we're at
nice.
work. Something could be happening right now while we're recording this
Right.
program, and we don't know. So you get a
Yes.
little text message or a phone call, and
That helps.
then you can at least get the heads up because it's costly if you don't follow the snow emergency rules, right?
Yes,
It does
it is
add up. What
costly.
happens?
Yep. So if you don't follow the snow emergency rules, your car could get ticketed and towed. And you have to pay the ticket and a towing charge and possibly a storage fee to get your car back. And what's important here to know is that the towing and ticket charges are more than $150.
Yeah, they add up. I have had my car towed, and I have had to retrieve my car from an impound lot, and it's not nice.
No, it's not.
And it's also, you know, it's a relationship here, right, between the city.
It is.
I mean, it's not the tow guy's fault, and it's not the impound lot's fault, and I can't help it if it snowed, right?
Right.
So it adds up more than $150, and on top of that, there's a long line, right? And that's part of the reason why we're doing this broadcast, because we're trying to get the message out in a variety of different ways and in different languages so that folks get a clear understanding about how weather impacts driving in the Twin Cities metropolitan area here. Now, St. Paul, it's a little bit different, right, Tom?
Right, in St. Paul, it's usually 3 inches of snow or an accumulation of 3 inches or more.
Okay, so this might sound silly. You go out there with a ruler and stick it in the snow and say, we got 3 inches?
Yes,
I mean,
they do.
It's as simple as that, huh?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
And they'll notify the media by 3 p.m.
okay.
whether they're going to declare.
And that gives them plenty of time to sound the alarm and let folks know.
Correct.
Okay, and even 6 p.m. in Minneapolis is plenty of time to make the news and use other tools to communicate the snow emergency. All right, so St. Paul, 3 inches, 3 p.m., you get the word out, and, you know, how do people find out then?
Well, the local media,
Right,
your favorite news channel,
right,
cable channel 18.
right. That's in the city area only, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And then the city webpage was stpaul.gov/snow.
Okay,
And you can follow that on Twitter by
Yeah.
following St. Paul. 651-266-7569.
right.
And you can sign up for text message alert, and that's also at the on the webpage.
So both cities employing social media tools, websites, media, phone systems to try to get the word out. Phone systems when you can, whether it's a call-in line of your own. Okay, good. So after St. Paul declares a snow emergency, you're busy doing the same thing, removing snow, right?
Plowing snow.
Okay.
And they're busy tagging and towing.
Yeah.
So it's very important to park on the right street. Do not park on streets that are marked night plow route or night plow route this side of street.
So unlike the city of Minneapolis, you actually have signs that are out there designating a plow situation.
Correct.
Okay. The signs are out clearly marked night plow route.
Route and night plow route this side of street.
Okay. And so then that lets you know you don't have to worry about odd and even in St. Paul. You need to look for the signs.
Correct.
Okay, great. I think it's a red and white sign if memory serves.
Yes,
Is that
it
right?
is.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
good.
Emergency.
All right, I got it. All right, so, and of course, you have staff that people can call if you aren't into multimedia tools of yet, or if you're a senior citizen or someone who's not familiar with the use of computers or text messaging, you can just simply pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. So, and again, this may sound, it feels like we're oversimplifying a little bit, but because the cities have different rules, it's kind of important for us to clarify them over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but come summertime, I forget about the winter rules. Every season, it's worth repeating how to navigate yourself on the street. Now, back to St. Paul, you know, can you leave your car on the non-snow emergency streets the next day?
No, because those are the streets that will be plowed.
Okay.
Again, for example, if you live on a residential street and there's a sign on that street that says night plow route this side of street, which means you would not park on that side of the street.
Right.
So when that street is plowed in the evening, then you can move your car to that side the next day.
Okay. So you do have to pay attention then to obviously it'll be obvious when it's been cleaned.
Correct.
All right, and then you can move the car over. So you're kind of doing the shuffle instead of over 3 days like Minneapolis. You're kind of doing the shuffle overnight. Overnight.
Yeah.
Okay, good. What about not moving the car? Are the penalties?
It's not pretty.
No, it's not.
It's a tag and a tow. And of course, like Minneapolis, you're subject to fines and
Yeah.
storage fees, and that can go anywhere up to $275. So it's really important to pay attention.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the answer to this question, either one of you. Does insurance ding you if you get X number of tickets related to parking? Or would your insurance leave you alone on parking? It's just speeding and
that
other
might be a
traffic
moving
violations.
violation, yeah.
It's just the moving violations.
And in
Okay.
St. Paul, if you live north of 94, your car will get towed to the impound lot on Como Avenue, which is across from the State Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
If you live south of 94, your car gets towed to Barge Channel Road, which is off of Concord Street in St. Paul's west side.
Okay, so you have the 2 impound lots. How about Minneapolis?
Minneapolis only has one.
One. Okay, one main station.
Yes.
Are the lines long at both places? I bet they are because people forget.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
And the temper's short?
Yeah, there's a short fuse.
You know, what's the best advice then for people to, who have to park on the street? There are a lot of homes in the Twin Cities that don't come with garages.
Just
there's
stay
a lot of-
informed. Stay informed. It really is. You have to stay informed. Have a backup plan, especially if you park on the street. If you're going to travel, leave your keys with a sibling or a neighbor that you can trust to make sure your car is moved.
Odd question, but maybe not. What if the car won't start? It's cold outside. Still your responsibility to move it, right?
Yes.
So that means you've got to call your own tow guy to get it moved or get a jump start to move the car out of the way.
Yes.
Okay, that's a bummer. But you don't want to have a fine on top of it, right?
No, you don't.
Okay. So the best way is informed. Are you all, are you plugged into text messaging too are you plugged into text messaging, or how do you do it for yourselves, for your own personal vehicles?
Yes, I am plugged into text messaging.
So you use the text messaging
Yes,
system
I
and the
do.
website. Of course,
Yep.
you
It's
tell
more
people for a
convenient.
living. Do you live in Minneapolis?
I do,
Okay,
yes.
so you're plugged in that way. How about you?
Just for living here my whole life, it's like I said, it's a parking emergency.
Yeah.
You just have to realize that's why I like to go back to the parking emergency, because it's about parking your car and getting it off the street.
Yeah. Are you in the St. Paul area then too?
Yes,
then?
I am. I'm
Okay.
in Roseville, but
So
it's
so-
pretty
so-
much the same.
It is, okay. Well, in the suburbs too, again, so when we should say this, for folks that are living in the suburbs outside the Twin Cities metropolitan area, they should check in again with the city resources
You
to
bet.
find out. Now, a question, 911. It's not appropriate to call 911 to find out whether or not there's a snow emergency, right? No. Some people do. It's convenient. They think it's easy, but 911 is not the number to call.
Yep. I would like to add to that too is that the city of Minneapolis has 311. It's a call center. You can call for all non-emergency related calls, and you can call there just to check if the city has declared an emergency, as well as to call to check if your car has been towed.
Great, so that'll line you up with resources too. Listen, it can happen. We want to try and avoid the ticket and tow situation and have a clear understanding about it. Now, who's responsible for knowing the rules?
You are.
That's
You're
right.
responsible.
If you have a car and you have a license and it's insured, and you're on the road, it's your job to pay attention to it.
And be neighborly. Inform others in your neighborhood.
That's a good piece of advice. There could be some senior citizens on your street that just don't know and don't get the word out.
Yeah.
If you get in a situation where maybe you didn't move your car, and because the snow was so heavy and it moved so fast, you've been plowed in. I've seen that sometimes with cars on the streets. What do you do in that situation?
Well, in St. Paul, when your car does get moved, they call it a snowbird, so we do come back and we do pushbacks to take care of the mound that's in the street.
Okay.
And again, you can contact the city, if you have a snowbird in front of your house that has now been moved.
Okay.
And we
so-
do go around, and that occupies a lot of the winter because there's a lot of snowbirds.
Yeah. You've actually run into some situations where emergency vehicles could not get through city streets. I know both cities have dealt with this. It's a chronic problem, unfortunately.
Yes.
New drivers, too, have to get to know this as well, right? If you're just getting your license and you're finding yourself on the street. What are some of the other challenges that you're finding, Gower? I know we're doing this program in different languages because we want to make sure that folks that speak other languages, not native English alone, that they have some resources and ways to get information. It is a learning curve, right?
It is, definitely, yeah. And I think just what's important to know is the snow emergency rules itself. I think the odd and the even trick people up sometimes because they, like I said, I think they think it has to do with the street versus the house number. But I think educating yourself and knowing the snow emergency rules, as well as if the last digit is an odd or even in your house, to know.
Okay, so again, and there are differences, and I know you don't know the answer to this question, but it bears. I can hear people yelling at the television set or even the website streaming video. Why do the cities have different rules? But is it just over time? The rules have been set by city officials who make the standards, and your job is to simply carry them out, educate, and then enforce, right?
Right. I think it's easy to keep the same plan. Easy for people to remember. If you're going to change it every other year, then
I think that adds more confusion.
Yeah. So now we have separate plans, and they're ingrained, and now it's a matter of making sure that people understand. Let's go back and give those telephone numbers one more time so we have different information for the city. So for the city of St. Paul, we want to go ahead and when we need some help with plow information, what number should we call?
651-266-7569.
Wonderful. And Gow for Minneapolis?
Yep. 612-348-7669.
Right. All right. And of course, media, website, sign up for text messaging, use your telephone, ask your neighbor.
Look out the window.
Look out the window. When the snow falls, the first thing you need to figure out is what is the snow emergency policy in the city in which I live, whether it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, or some other suburb. Both of you have a very challenging job to communicate folks about this. I thank you both for your time on
Thank
Echo.
you.
Thank you.
And I know that it sounds confusing from time to time, and it's worth reminding everyone about snow emergencies every year. Here's some key messages to give you the highlights of what we've talked about, and then we'll send you to more information on yet another website. First off, pay attention to snow parking rules so streets get plowed and you don't get towed. Secondly, plan ahead so you know how to learn when a snow emergency is declared in your area. Be ready to follow your city's rules and move your car during each snow emergency phase. And don't forget, if your car won't start, it's still your responsibility to move it. And number 4, call hotlines, check your city local websites for the latest information, and tune in to the media. Once again, Tom Sagert from the City of St. Paul Maintenance Department, thank you very much for joining us. Gal Vang, City of Minneapolis, thank you very much for joining us on Echo. Thanks to all of our viewers for watching our program. If you'd like more information on this topic or other topics from Echo, please visit our website, echominnesota.org. Until next time, I'm your host, Lillian McDonald. Thank you again so much for watching. Make it a great day.
Echo TV is a co-production of Minnesota's Emergency, Community, and Health Outreach Collaborative of Health, Safety, Emergency Preparedness, Ethnic and Nonprofit Agencies, and TPT's Minnesota Channel.